Welcome everybody to the Scale Up Show. This is your host, Ryan Staley here. I have a very special guest with me today. I have Steve Phillips. Steve is the CEO of Zappi and the chair of the MRS Sustainability Council. He's been a regular speaker on the topic on consumer purchase journeys and actually won the Best New Thinking Award at the MRS conference and is a recipient of both the ARF Great Mind Certificate and the UK Industries Innovation Award. Steve, welcome, man. Happy to have you on.
Thank you, Ryan. Really good to be here.
What about your solution? Can you just describe the outcomes it creates, exactly what it does?
I can. So my background is in consumer insights as a market researcher, and I've worked in consulting companies in market research. So I know what delivering great consumer insights is around. So people would go off and craft a questionnaire, get some data from respondents about a new ad campaign or a new product or service. And then they would create a report, write that report, go and present it. So what our software does is automates that entire function. So we're a bit like SurveyMonkey, but for experts, an expert-led SurveyMonkey. So we are doing, our clients are used to working with high-end consulting companies, and they choose us as a way of making that consulting come through software, and so be significantly faster and significantly cheaper. I mean, when we went to market, when we launched 9 years ago, our core proposition was we take something that at the moment takes 4 weeks and we do it in 4 hours, and we take something that costs $20,000 and make it $2,000. And so that's the core, that's the essence of what we've done.
So wait a sec. So you had 2 or 3 failures before this one hit?
Yeah. So I've had 4 companies, I think 4 or 5 companies over my period of my life, and also thought about opening a company in an area and not done it. So those are some of the misses that you have to go, oh, I should have done that. I should have done that. Yeah. So everyone has their failures and also their successes. So I've had a few over the time, and the other companies I have been reasonably successful. I've built them, but they've been consulting companies. So they are not hugely valuable, pretty profitable, which is nice, not hugely valuable and not very scalable. And it was partly the frustration of that lack of scalability that also pushed me in the technology direction. So a project would cost $20,000, and that's because you're charging out 10 people for X number of hours or whatever it might be. So it's an hour's, really effectively, it's an hours-based system. And charging by the hour, it's like lawyers, it's not a great business model, at least to help clients, because there is no incentive whatsoever to do something quickly, because you're charging for time. So you have to even sometimes just give the impression that it's going to take you a long time. But actually, software is so much better than that, because you're not even trying to suggest that there's a people component in it. So it's obviously scalable. Now, as with any software, the first iteration wasn't great, and we probably overpromised and underdelivered on occasion. And we probably churned through a few clients, and people were disappointed. Other people were very excited about the possibility that the software showed, because obviously going from 4 weeks to 4 hours and 20,000 to 2,000 is incredibly useful. And I think at the same time, we had that trend in business towards agility. So obviously you have the agile software development movement, and that was spilling into the mainstream parts of business, where they were thinking, we should be agile too. We should be doing agile advertising. We should be agile product development using design-led thinking. And the promise of what we were doing was to empower those agile movers to make quick decisions, to get instant feedback, to understand what customers think about their idea that afternoon or the next day, but not just raw data, but a genuine report about what their idea is, their strengths, their weaknesses, areas to improve, what it would do for the brand, how it would make their consumers feel, who it's appealing to. Is it more for males or females or older people or younger people? So we were giving them the insight that they really needed, but in a time frame that worked. And that was the critical thing. At least it meant that quite a few companies were prepared to iterate and help us along the way. So we had companies that genuinely believed in the promise and would help and we've this is what we've always done, is we've just worked with clients who, are prepared to be experimental, at least for a few years. I would say now our client base isn't necessarily experimental in the same way. We have some experimenters within clients, but I remember chatting to one of our clients probably 3 years ago. So this is after about year six. And they said to me very clearly, Steve, you've got to realize you're no longer an experimental budget line. You're now core to our go-to-market dynamic. So you can't fuck up anymore. You can't have those bugs in the software. You can't have data problems. So that was a good realization that we had made that sort of next step jump to being a really interesting piece of technology that could solve our problems.
Like, what's your mental framework as the leader of the company in terms of how you approach leadership, autonomy, culture? How do you approach it? What's your framework, and what have you seen work really well?
Yeah, sure. I think so. We've experimented a bit with as much sort of radical transparency, radical autonomy as we can. So we've been through different phases. We're continuously learning. We have, I think, a very positive culture. So we get very high employee satisfaction scores. We really, at the heart of it is trust and truth, I think. So we go into things automatically trusting people to do the right thing. And sometimes it doesn't happen, but we resist the idea of creating a rule for every time one individual fucks up. Right? We will not create rules if we can possibly avoid creating rules, and we will instead leave it up to people because we trust them. And then truth to me is about getting to the heart of the why, asking those 5 whys, getting to the heart of the problem that we're trying to solve, the heart of the issue for the client, the heart of why teams aren't working as well together as they should. So that trust and truth combination, and that leads to, I think, autonomy, because it says to people, look, you can make decisions about what you're doing. You can decide which way your team goes. You know what the vision of the company is. You can help work through to make that vision a reality.
Like, what's your mental framework as the leader of the company in terms of how you approach leadership, autonomy, culture? How do you approach it? What's your framework, and what have you seen work really well?
Yeah, sure. I think so. We've experimented a bit with as much sort of radical transparency, radical autonomy as we can. So we've been through different phases. We're continuously learning. We have, I think, a very positive culture. So we get very high employee satisfaction scores. We really, at the heart of it is trust and truth, I think. So we go into things automatically trusting people to do the right thing. And sometimes it doesn't happen, but we resist the idea of creating a rule for every time one individual fucks up. Right? We will not create rules if we can possibly avoid creating rules, and we will instead leave it up to people because we trust them. And then truth to me is about getting to the heart of the why, asking those 5 whys, getting to the heart of the problem that we're trying to solve, the heart of the issue for the client, the heart of why teams aren't working as well together as they should. So that trust and truth combination, and that leads to, I think, autonomy, because it says to people, look, you can make decisions about what you're doing. You can decide which way your team goes. You know what the vision of the company is. You can help work through to make that vision a reality. And if that means spending some money, spend some money. If that means experimenting with a client, experiment with a client. If that means developing the software a particular way, do that. Do whatever you think is the best way of helping the company get towards its vision. And I think if you create that culture, and I have to say, things like the Netflix deck have been a huge impetus into some of the things we've done. We read widely on the subject, whether it's Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux, whether it's looking at some of the stuff Zappos did in terms of holacracy. So that thinking, that reading around the subject does impact us. And then we've just taken what we think are the best ideas and implemented it in our own space and in our own way.
I love that, man. So basically what I hear is basically instead of having them earn trust, assume trust or give them trust to begin with, get the 5 whys so that you could foundationally understand really what's important to them as individuals and like where they want to go, and then leverage an autonomy structure, and then you take best practices from Netflix, Zappos, other cultural juggernauts. And have you read the book Culture Code?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
It's in fact it's on my desk.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought of. And so, just as one follow-up question, that's a good, 3-4 step framework to take it one step farther when we're looking at that. You said you take the best of what you've seen work at Netflix and Zappos. Like, give me an example of what you mean by, some of those things that you just like. What was the single most
Sure.
impactful thing that you took from those organizations?
So a couple of things. I mean, the obvious one is the expense policy from Netflix, which is treat the company's money as if it was your own, and that is our expense policy. So it's word for word the Netflix expense policy. We also do unlimited holidays, and both of those for me are an expression of trust. They are, we believe in you. We believe that you will do the right thing for yourself and the company.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the sorts of things that people talk about because they seem radical. But if you've ever experienced them, people are good people. 99% of the people you meet are trustworthy, decent people who want to do well. And if you're a good organization that treats them fairly and trusts them, then they'll treat you fairly and trust you. And I think that gets the heart of what we're trying to do. And then the tricky bit is maintaining it. So an example with actually our previous CFO, we'd had a good quarter, and I said to him, right, I'm going to tell everyone on our Friday roundup on all hands meeting that everyone can go that weekend, celebrate having a good quarter. This is under COVID, so we couldn't have a party, and say, take your friends, family out for a meal. And they said, okay, great idea, completely agree. Let's give everyone a budget. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. That's not what we do. It's not how we work. We just trust people to do the right thing. And of course, if we'd have given everyone a budget and said you can spend $150, people would spend $145 to $148 because that's. Whereas if we say to them, no, we trust you, just go do the right thing. And they went off and they did the right thing, and the average expenditure was $120, not $200,
I was going to ask you what it was, so that's good. Okay.
Yeah. So and there are a few people who spent a lot more, and someone asked them why, and they said, oh well, it was my grandparents were in town, so I took them out because I was so excited to be working for Zappi, and I wanted to tell my grandparents, and we were like, great, that's wonderful, that's lovely, it's exactly what I'd have done if my grandparents were in town. So yeah, but it's always when we're at 300 people now. When it was 20 people, I knew everyone's name. At 300, it's hard. So it's harder to remember that you have to keep trusting, even people you haven't met, even people you don't know, because that's the core of the company, because that's what matters about culture. And so it's defending that, I think, becomes a job over time.
Excellent, man. I love this. This is really, really good. It's got the wheels spinning, and I think you're doing some amazing things. So that's awesome that you have that trust, and then it's reciprocated back to you. So we're just about up on time. I'd love to spend more time with you, but we've already taken enough. So where can people find more about you, more about Zappi, and what you're doing?
Sure. They can look at our website is zappi.io. Check me out on LinkedIn, Stephen Phillips at Zappi, and love to start conversations with people. So please do get in touch.
Excellent, man. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you, Ryan. Really appreciate it. It's great fun.